special guest with me. His name is Riley Rucker. I'll make sure I said that right. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Best Texan name I've ever heard. Even if you didn't, even if I didn't know you were from Texas with that kind of name, I'm like, he's from Texas.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So, Riley, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started here.
So I'm a seventh grader at an online school called Texas Connections Academy at Houston. We are based out of Houston, connected to Houston ISD, but we have students all over Texas, some even outside of Texas. And I do videos where we interview police officers, firefighters, EMS. We've even done some people from the military, at Middle School Career Readiness. That's sort of a company or YouTube channel that we started to provide career assistance to middle school and high school students. And then in addition to that, we also have the Student Council Career Readiness Program at TCAH. And then we have Off-Road Fire Rescue, which is kind of like a JRTC program, but for the public safety sector.
Okay. That's actually pretty cool to see. We've done a video at a local high school near us that does kind of emergency preparedness. They do police,
Yeah.
fire, and EMS, and that was cool to kind of see their structure. But I like that you guys are actually doing it on the online kind of format too, because you're basically homeschooled, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So, a lot of times when people get homeschooled, you think, oh, there's not a whole lot of opportunities. I don't get to meet things. But you guys are really flipping the script and going above and beyond what normal education is. And the fact that, fire, police, and EMS and public service is struggling to get, recruitment and retention and volunteers and paid staff. The fact that you guys are hitting this early on, even in the junior high and high school level, is one of the coolest things I've ever heard of. So when you sent me an email and said, hey, Mr. Borrello, can I interview you for my school? I'm like, absolutely. I would love to get on and talk to you and figure out more about what you guys are doing, because you guys are truly the heroes next door for us. You're going to be the next generation that takes the reins from us as we retire out and move on. And we want to make sure that we're leaving you with something to move forward with. So first of all, thank you very much for doing what you're doing. And we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit today. Instead of me doing the interview all together, I'm going to have Riley do the interview for me and ask me a bunch of questions. And we'll see how this goes. So Riley, I'm going to turn the hosting job over to you and go for it.
All right. So as you have your YouTube channel, but as you've stated multiple times in your YouTube channel, you are a firefighter paramedic. So how did you first get into the medical field?
Okay. I kind of got into it by accident. To be honest, I was an athlete growing up. So, me being a boy, being an athlete, I got hurt a lot. So I was in the emergency room, doing the stupid things, breaking bones and that kind of stuff. So I kind of got used to the PT, the medical aspect. I really enjoyed the doctors that I worked with, the stitches that I got, that kind of stuff. But on top of that, I had actually family members that were in the medical field. My mom was an OR nurse for well over 30 years or more. And she kind of got me into it as a child, because one day, either I was out of school or whatever, but she needed to take me to class when she was going through nursing school. And I was able to go into the classroom, and they were doing a lab work where they were dissecting sheep's brains. And I thought that was the most cool thing ever. Is like, this is absolutely awesome. So the medical aspect for me was very drawing. If I couldn't be an athlete, this was the way I wanted to go. But the question is, do I become a nurse? Do I become a doctor? Do I become, a medic, that kind of stuff? For me, it was the draw of the outdoors. Being stuck indoors is very difficult. So
Yeah.
nurse, being a doctor, I'm like, I'm stuck in the four walls of a hospital. Granted, it's a great job. You see a lot of different people, you see a lot of different walks of life, but being out on the streets and having the ability to have kind of my own time and going out and seeing the public where they're at, that was a real big draw for me. So that's kind of how I
And
got started.
You know how usually you see people in athletes that get injured, if they choose the medical field, they go into like kinesiology, sports science, stuff like that. You actually chose a more hands-on career field where you would help those people who get injured.
Yeah, yeah. Part of that is because I'm an adrenaline junkie. I like
Yeah.
to do things that, keep me on the edge. And, yeah, being a sports athlete, that's great, but it's a finite part of EMS. I consider them part of EMS too because they're working with
Mhm.
the injuries, but it's usually younger athletes that are relatively healthy. It's usually an injury or, something like that. Where in the medical field of paramedicine, we cover the whole gamut. We get elderly, we get
Mhm.
pediatrics, we get newborns, we get the sickly, everything in between. And that actually drew me in a little bit more.
Mhm. And the first time I really saw, paramedics doing their job was my cousin. He's what, I guess in high school now, and when he was in middle school, he had a middle school game, and of course it's a small town. There's only one ambulance station in the whole town, right? Um, and so somebody on the opposing team uh was running, and someone from our team was chasing them, but the way that the person fell, it caused the person who was chasing him to trip over him and end up landing on his head. So, of course, you get the ambulance driving out onto the field, and because that was my cousin's team, I was actually on the sidelines watching, so I actually got to see that, and I was like, that seems pretty interesting. Somebody gets hurt, and they're right there to come help. So,
Right. One of the
pretty
other
interesting.
Yeah, one of the other things that, drew me in, was television. We have social
Mhm.
media now. We have the TikToks, we have the, YouTube, the Zooms, the all the social media aspect. But for me, it was television and Emergency back in the late
Mhm.
60s, early 70s came out. The Johnny and Roy, that's what got me excited. And then, the old TV show Rescue 911 with
Mm.
William Shatner. I was like, man, that stuff's actually really cool. I would love to do that. But I wanted to be that guy in the helicopter that jumps out of the helicopter and does the rescue, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I was like, I think I want to do that.
And when you think about it, most people, they see that and they're like, "That's really cool." And you watch some of the older shows and you're like, "That's pretty accurate." But then you see these newer shows and you're like, "That doesn't really happen."
Yeah, I think what happened over the years is they needed some more of the drama.
Mhm.
The relationship kind of things. People get drawn into
Yeah.
that. You need kind of a storyline behind the TV shows. I completely understand that, but yeah, I'm right. If you if you ever sat, in my
Mhm.
living room when I was watching these with my kids, I'm yelling at the screen. I'm like, "That's not true. You need to fill up that oxygen. That bag needs to be
Yeah.
filled up." Or, they
And,
don't
like,
do
some
that.
of the things you see them break into the building without any SCBA on, you're like, "What are
Yeah.
you doing?"
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It is television. It is entertainment. I wish they had other shows that kind of bring it back to the old school. Third Watch,
Mhm.
in my opinion, was one of the last shows that actually showed a lot of it. Now, granted,
Yeah.
towards the end of Third Watch, they started, to go towards the police side versus the fire and EMS. Started out
Mhm.
real strong fire and EMS. I think it's just easier to film for the cop side. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just my personal opinion.
And for me, uh, my mom, she's a teacher online, and sometimes we'll be watching those shows, and I'll be doing what you're doing. I'm like, "That's not true. That's not true." And she's like, "Just watch it."
Yeah, yeah.
She just
Yeah.
doesn't really
It
like my
always makes me wonder
commentary.
though, if you, watch some of the other shows, maybe the lawyer show, or if you were, even a cop show. I do know
Mhm.
some police officers. I wonder if they do the same thing. If they look at the TVs, go, "That's not how the law
Yeah.
does this," that's not how the cop is supposed to do that. I
I
think,
recently watched a video of Naval Criminal Investigative Service, one of those actual agents watching an episode of NCIS, and he's like, "This is wrong, this is wrong, this is
yeah.
wrong."
So we're not the only ones that do that. That's good to
Yeah.
know.
Um, Did you have any jobs before being a paramedic?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I did a lot of things. I was kind of the jack of all trades and the master of many,
Yeah.
the master of none. The master of many. I mean, I mucked stalls doing horses. I helped with equestrian riding for handicapped kids. I did oil changes. I worked in a pharmacy.
Mhm.
And one of the things that kind of got me hooked on medicine, no, too, is I was a lifeguard. So all through high school,
Mhm.
as a
Yeah.
freshman, we had a local water park and I became a lifeguard. Growing up in Michigan, where I'm from, we had a lot of lakes, a lot of things to do, but the water park itself needed lifeguards, and I got into there fairly early. Fell in love with it. Ended up managing it by the time I was done. I had 125 employees underneath me as a senior in high school. So learning how to run the water park, all the health and
Mhm.
safety. I had to do all the training for the new employees. So that was pretty cool. And then even growing up past that, once I got married, I cleaned air ducts. I did a lot of different things. So I got pretty well rounded, which I think gave me an edge when I got into medicine because I can relate with a lot of the patients that I go to because I've
Mhm.
done their job to a certain extent. Um, I've seen them in the public. I've been out in the public. I'm not just a one hit wonder kind of thing.
And, what you said were, like, you cleaned or you did, oil changes and stuff like that. In certain public safety fields, you need to know that. Like, if you're in a fire station, whether you're on the ambulance or on the fire truck, you gotta know how to maintain that. I mean, on the fire truck, usually it's the driver or engineer, but on the ambulance, it could be anybody from the ambulance crew who's having to check the oil, check the lights, check all that.
Right, right. Now, fortunately for me, going through high school, we didn't have the public service side of it. We had
Mhm.
a tech school that I went to. It was a vo-tech school, but they had carpentry, they had culinary arts, and they had auto mechanics. And growing up in
Yeah.
Michigan, if you weren't an auto mechanic, you that's pretty much Ford Nation there. I
Mhm.
did small engines, and I do auto mechanics. That's actually one of the things that I do for a hobby is I take care of my little fleet of cars here, and I can rebuild an engine and do complete overhaul on a car if I need to. So yeah, bringing that into the service, keeping my truck tip top shape, doing my truck checks isn't just making sure all the gear is there, but actually making sure that it's functioning well when it starts pulling to the right, when I start wearing tires down. All that came from the knowledge that I had from those other jobs leading into this.
Mhm. And, like, some of the things that we do at off-road fire rescue, people hear off-road and they're like, "Oh, it's not a real fire department. It can't be, right?" Well, it's not a real fire department, but the reason that we called it off-road fire rescue is because we also give some of that technical training. So, like, for one of my school projects, it was make a presentation about your volunteering. So I posted a video of me on a four-wheeler doing one of our wilderness extrication drills. So that's a drill, a hiker gets lost in the woods, sprains his ankle or hurts his ankle or something like that, and we have to go and get them. So we get out the four wheelers, side by sides, all those off road vehicles. We make sure they're cleaned and good, everything's working good. We make sure the lights and sirens work, and then we go into get as close into the woods as we can to the survivor, and then we, take our packs and we go on foot to help that person.
Okay.
And one of the things that most people have is they want to be a firefighter, but they don't really know what it takes. And
Sure.
that's why we started this to, kind of, is this what you want to do? Well, you
Right.
got to do this, this, and this.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do that is you want to hit all aspects. When you're talking about firefighting, they are the jack of all trades, master of
Mhm.
many. Whether that's, hiking through the fields like you said and working on, their four-wheelers or their, side by sides. Learning, how hoses, you know, have to get pulled and the flow
Mhm.
reduction of the distance between hoses and what size pumps you need and the mathematics that go along with that. And, there's a lot of things. Learning how to drive properly, learning how to, talk to people. That's another thing
Mhm.
that people don't realize. You're like, oh, I'm a firefighter. I just put the wet stuff on the red stuff. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of public service. That's why we are
Mhm.
public service. You need to talk to the community. get them involved, let them know about smoke detectors, let them know about, exit strategies and all that kind of stuff. That's all part of the job.
Mhm. And uh we on middle school career readiness, we started a series called Behind the Scenes of Public Safety. So we've interviewed chiefs for the administrative aspect. We've dispatchers, because dispatchers, they're real behind the scenes. People don't think about that, but when you call 911, that's the first voice you're hearing.
Absolutely.
Uh and then PIOs, public information officers. We interviewed some of those and people were like, what's a PIO? What's a PIO?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you call and are trying to be like, well, my smoke detector's not working. Can we get somebody out here? You're going to talk to a PIO more than likely.
Yep.
I-
Yep.
If
Well, that
you're
and
planning
letting the
public
public
events.
know what's going on. If you have a big event,
Hmm.
unfortunately, a tragedy or something like that, which we've had
Hmm.
over the years, you have to have someone that is comfortable, talking in front of a large public, someone that's comfortable in front of the television, with a microphone in their face, and
Yes.
that kind of stuff. And that is a skill set that not everybody can do. So there are so many different tasks that are out there. I had a boss that was a fantastic boss, one of the best medics I've ever worked with, but she could not speak. She could not speak in public, I should say. One to one,
Hmm.
she's rock solid. She'll teach you anything that you need to know. You put her in front of just four people and she freezes up. And that's okay because we have other people that kind of take up that slack. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head is there are so many different avenues that can happen within the fire department. Even most recently, I went up to Williamsport, PA area, and we did a communications truck. You were talking about dispatchers. Talk
Hmm.
about
Yeah.
the technological aspect of firefighting and learning how to
Hmm.
run all the equipment, how to set up that kind of stuff. That was a whole nother idea that I really didn't even have a clue on. I always just bumped that off at the county level, but no, that's actually, part of the fire service or EMS or
Hmm.
police.
Yeah. And with off-road fire rescue, we haven't done a lot of in-person meetups, but we've been doing a lot of online because we haven't been getting a lot of funding. We don't we're not part of a fire service, so
Yep.
we don't get city or county funding. And so, like you were saying with the volunteer fire departments, your most recent videos have been with volunteer fire departments. And that's really what we're trying to get the students that come in to do right out of high school, because if you're at a volunteer fire department for, let's say, even a year, and then you go apply for a full-time paid position as a firefighter, they're going to be like, well, hey, they were at the volunteer fire department for this amount of years. They have more experience than this guy who's right out of high school.
Yeah, yeah, and the information that you're going to get from a volunteer, you can go into a local fire department having absolutely no knowledge. And
Hmm.
the men and women at those departments are willing and able to teach you everything that you need to know. And it's all what you put into it. If you only want to be a driver, they'll teach you pumps. If you want to be
Hmm.
a firefighter, they'll teach you that. If you want to learn how to write grants and help with that finance or run a
Hmm.
bingo hall or, run a, fundraiser or something like that, they'll teach you how to
Hmm.
do that. So when you go to apply for a job at a big city department or a paid department, and you say, hey, I already know how to write grants, I already know how to take care of this because I've already taught that and I've done it for 2 or 3 years. Yeah, you're definitely going to have a leg up on that hiring process. Now, you'll still have to go through their usually fire academy or whatever to make sure
Hmm.
that you're on the same page with their policies and procedures. But you're definitely going to have a leg up for sure.
Hmm. Um, and so the company you currently work for, is that, like a private ambulance company, county based, municipality? How does
It's a
that work?
municipality base. So it is a nonprofit organization. It's Westwood Fire Company and EMS. It is based out of Valley Township. However, because the local hospitals, I got to give a little bit of history here, first of all. In
Hmm.
Chester County, Pennsylvania, when EMS started way back when, the volunteer fire departments were basic life support only. They brought the ambulances. All the medics were all hospital based medics. So every hospital from Brandywine Hospital, Paoli Hospital, Chester County, Southern Chester County, that's where the medics kind of started with. kind of modeling what you saw on TV with emergency and stuff like
Mhm.
that. They came out of the hospitals and they were the supportive chase cars for every unit across the board. Over the years, that kind of transitioned from going from hospital-based chase cars to fire-based MICU services or ALS services and BLS services. So Westwood, about 4 years ago, whether they wanted it or not, ended up taking over a lot of territory because the local hospital, not only did the medic unit leave, but the hospital actually closed, which
Mm.
left a huge gap in the area. So
Mhm.
they, worked diligently to create a business plan that not only included their main station where they were at, which they were BLS for many, many years, but now they expanded to 2 different substations for MICU service, another substation for another chase car, just to kind of control the area that was left vacant when that hospital closed.
Mhm. And what I've started seeing, I don't know if you have this where you live, but in Texas, I've started seeing a lot of volunteer. Uh, Everybody has volunteer fire departments, right? But I've started seeing volunteer ambulance companies and police departments even,
Mhm.
and that's really good for rural towns because, like the town where my dad lives in, Marble Falls. Uh, Very small town, but a part of a strip mall where a restaurant was that caught on fire recently, and our city fire department only has 2 engines and ambulance. And it's a pretty large strip mall, so they didn't have the vehicles to do that.
Right.
So they called in 2 other volunteer fire departments, and they came in to assist with that fire. But if those fire departments, police departments, and volunteer ambulance, fire, and police departments weren't there, there's nobody for that area. It could take an hour or something to get to those areas.
Right, and if you've done any kind of firefighting or done research, an hour into that structure's gone because every 30
Mhm,
to 60 seconds, the size of the fire doubles. So,
mhm,
even if it started in a small trash fire, an hour into it, the whole house is gone if you
mhm,
didn't get anybody there. So, we appreciate the volunteers for sure. And, Chester County is a lot of volunteer services on the ambulance service. Most of the medics are now paid. I don't see very volunteer medics. We do have some occasionally here and there. We have some volunteer pre-hospital nurses, some volunteer doctors, NPAs. But for the most part, the volunteerism is on the fire side. The EMS is kind of taking over the paid side.
and, like you were saying, uh, with it turning from the structure just being completely gone, within, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes of the actual city fire department getting on that fire, it had already turned to a defensive fire.
Yeah.
There was nothing to save there. And so that kind of the volunteer fire departments were a little less responsive to that, but still there was still other buildings around it that they were trying to salvage, keep that fire from spreading.
Right, right. Because, a small fire can turn into a huge block fire, can turn into,
Mhm,
a major city fire.
mhm,
If not under control. I mean, you go back to way back when the Chicago fire happened back in the 1800s from kicking over
mhm,
a lantern from a cow, from what I understood,
mhm,
and it took down almost an entire city because
mhm.
it was all volunteer back then, and they didn't have the organizations that we have today.
And, the way that city is set up, it was right in the middle of, Main Street, so it's how most main streets are, small little streets with buildings all on the side, and City Hall was maybe not 1 block away,
Yeah,
so they're trying to keep that, "No, don't let the whole city burn down." So, those volunteers, definitely help, and then also, I know you mentioned earlier how some fire departments and yeah, some fire departments will have volunteer and paid staff. Is that something that yours does?
yeah, we're actually a combination. So the majority of our fire staff is volunteers. They come from home, that they
Mhm,
make a response either to the station to get the trucks out. If the truck is full and they're a little bit behind, they can actually make a response to the scene. They keep their gear in their vehicle. that kind of stuff. We do have a paid driver from, Monday through Friday from 8 to 6 kind of thing. So those peak hours that where most people are working, we need to have at least a driver. Um, and then us on the EMS side, because I'm on the MICU service, they actually put an air pack in the ambulance for us. I have two different sets of gear. I have my EMS gear and I have structural firefighting gear. So, we kind of work as a team or a family, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter whether you're volunteer or paid. We're on the same team. We're on the same company. We're going to do the same job. It's just, there's times where I need the help. I need as many people as I possibly can.
Mhm. And one of the things that's people really don't like is when you have a large amount of paid staff that spend 24 hours together in a station, and then you get a few volunteers. Like, wait, where'd they come from? But you still, what most people say is that it's really confusing because they don't know how they work. Those people don't know how they work. They don't spend that time together, but you still need to basically just make it work because your main
Yeah,
priority
I think if
is
you ha
what you're trying to
if you
save at the
have a
moment.
fire station that has paid staff there,
Mhm.
but yet you're doing a combination with volunteers, those paid departments have to look at those volunteers as supplements to what they're doing. They
Mhm.
cannot do their job cost effectively by hiring enough to cover the whole thing, and they can't do it just by themselves. They have to have that extra hand. So it's an
Mhm.
added benefit to have volunteers, even on a paid station, to have those extra set of hands.
Mhm. And lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
With most ambulance companies, you most people see ambulance companies and fire departments and they just see, ooh, fire truck, ooh, ambulance. But within that, there's different types of apparatuses. There's ALS ambulance, there's BLS ambulance, there's chase cars, there's intensive care units, there's all of that. And then within fire trucks, you got your brush trucks, you got your hazmat vehicles, incident command vehicles, and having that wide array of vehicles really helps in large incidents and sometimes even in small incidents because if it's a small brush fire, yes, an engine can respond, but it's going to take an engine longer to respond than, let's say, a Type 2 engine.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's unique that the fire departments all have the same, but yet different depending on their area.
Mhm,
Just within my own coverage area, I have some that have tankers. I have some that have ladders. I have some that are just engines. I have some that are brush trucks. I have some that are just QRS units, which are quick response units. And that's at
mhm,
the BLS level. I have some chase car medics. I have some ALS MICU services, which are the ambulance and medic on it. I have some that are dual medic on an ambulance. And so
mhm,
it really depends on the research that you do for your area to what
mhm,
best serves that area. Do you need to have 5 tankers for this little small area? Can I get away with an engine at this fire department, a tower at that other one, and a tanker at this one? And together, as a collaboration between the 3 different fire departments, right? The 3 different locations, they can handle whatever they need. Some departments are like, I want everything. I want a tanker. I want an engine. I want a brush truck. I want a ladder. I want a rescue. Well,
mhm.
okay, great, but then you need the personnel to cover all that too.
Yeah. So, like, with Marble Falls, we have, in Marble Falls, you know when somebody's from that area because they'll either say, "We live in Marble Falls," or "We live in Marble Falls City." 'Cause Marble Falls stretch over a large area of just ranch area, farm area, and then you have the small little city area. So if somebody says they're from Marble Falls City, you know they're from the city area. And there we have um a station with 2 Type 1 engines and an ambulance. But then additionally to that, in some of the ranch area, we have a station with a Type 6 truck, a ambulance. I think we even have an four-wheel drive ambulance there, and then a Type 2 truck.
Okay.
So because that's a more rural station, they have more of that firefighting or some of the wildland firefighting vehicles, and that's really what people need to think about when they're thinking about the area in which they're going to be wanting to work.
Right.
Like if you want to be a firefighter but you live in a large city, you're more than likely going to be on an engine. If you live in a rural area, you're more than likely going to be doing some wildland firefighting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and fortunately on our channel, we've had an opportunity to look at many of those things. We went out to Colorado, saw some of the wildland firefighter trucks. You know,
Hmm.
we don't have a whole lot of those here on the East Coast. We
Hmm.
saw, the different tankers. Now, you call a tanker in Colorado, you're going to get an airplane. They call them tenders out
Hmm.
there, so you got to be
Hmm.
cautious on what you call it too.
Yeah.
Is it a ladder? Is it a truck? Is it a tower?
Hmm.
Is it a bucket? Whatever they call it for that area.
Yeah.
But if you have a chance to view the channel, it's Heroes Next Door is the name of the channel on YouTube. We cover a lot of those different vehicles,
Hmm.
including an airport truck, including a specialty pumper out of Leland, Michigan. They have a flatbed pickup truck that is basically a pumper. It's called a
Hmm.
hydrant truck. That thing,
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty cool because they do a lot of drafting. They got a lot of water
Hmm.
sources. So, I definitely encourage anybody that's watching the video today, go back, look at some of our videos in the past, and look at all the different vehicles that are out there. And we're going to continue to bring you as many different vehicles as we can. We want to, highlight a lot of the stuff that's out there, the unique things, but we also like to highlight engines and ladders and rescues because everybody sets it up a little bit different. And I like to know
Hmm.
why. What works here versus what works there and what works over there. Why does your rescue have this equipment on it? Where do you hold it? Because what ends up happening, a lot of times I get emails saying, "Hey, I saw what you did in Green, Ohio. I love the way they set that up. We're going to change our truck and do it a little bit better here. We're going to
Hmm.
improve what we're doing because I saw it on this channel." And all too often, whether you're in the fire service, police service, or any public service, or really any job, you get kind of stuck in your own sandbox, right? You get stuck in
Yeah.
what I do right here. This is the tradition of what we did.
Hmm.
There is a foundation for tradition. You need to have that. But there's also stuff out there that you're like, hey, maybe we can do it a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently because I seen
Hmm.
it somewhere else. I took the time to do the research. I watched a channel like mine or South Metros or whoever's out
Hmm.
there. There's a bunch of different channels out there. That's where you're going to get the ideas to improve the service that you're at.
Hmm. And like, uh, in the city of Austin, in the actual main city area, there's a lot of high rises and stuff. So their ladder trucks are equipped with 100, some even 150-foot extendable ladders on the top. Well, our ladder truck at Marble Falls, we have the highest buildings that we have are two-story buildings.
Yeah.
So instead of having a ladder truck, we just have certain like ladders on our normal engines.
Yeah. Yeah. And that
So
works.
maybe the highest window is maybe 60 feet. So let's get a 50-foot, a 10-foot, and a 100-foot ladder on the engine. And then that can respond to a one-story structural fire or a two-story structural fire.
Right. Right. But on the flip side of that too, you only got two-story buildings or whatever, maybe a
Hmm.
three-story building for some of those things, but maybe you got a driveway or an approach to a house that is significantly longer. So you can
Hmm.
use those ladders, not necessarily to go up, but you can go out with them too. And we learned that from New Hope Eagle Fire Department, where they have a lot of area that's not high, but they have difficulty getting in. And by using a
Hmm.
ladder to go across the lawn or through the trees or whatever, makes their job a whole lot easier.
Yeah. And some of the things that people don't understand is that fire departments aren't just fire. Most fire engines now are equipped with BLS or ALS jump bags
Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
car. AEDs, there's at least one EMT on the engine so that if they're not using an ambulance for every single medical call.
Right.
If it's a medical call where they don't need transport, they can send an engine.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more because the EMS is getting so busy in America.
Mhm.
911 is being used for a lot of things, and sometimes it's overused, in my opinion. I've been doing this
Mhm.
30 years. There's some really abuse of the 911 service that goes on.
Mhm.
They can't get a ride versus, they don't have a family doctor, and they use the emergency room in the 911 service. So we are really short-staffed on the EMS side of it. And the way to
Mhm.
combat that a little bit is to use the fire department and even the police
Mhm.
departments to educate them to the level of either first responder or BLS, as you mentioned, and give them some equipment so they can at least hold down the fort until a truck frees up.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we're doing turnarounds pretty quickly, but even now, since our hospital closed on us, a turnaround time for us is about an hour, before,
Mhm.
by the time you call 911, get to the scene, treat the patient, transport the patient to get back into service, it's a minimum of an hour, to be honest with you. The transport is about a
Mhm.
half hour transport, no matter which hospital we go to. So, that's where those fire departments that have the capability and the urge and the want to help out, that's where they really can make a big difference because let's be honest, fires nowadays are not as frequent as they were back in the late 60s and early 70s, even 80s and
Yeah.
90s.
Mhm.
Because of the technology that's changed, because of the way building construction is, because of all the safety measures, firemen almost work their way out of a job by teaching them about smoke detectors. Now I get it that we're not asking somebody to get hurt or burn down a house. We did
Mhm.
what we're supposed to do, but their fire responses, went from, we'll say, 100 a year down to 50 a year. And
Mhm.
now, well, we still need that service because the EMS side is lacking. So by putting a jump bag on a truck will make a world of difference for any community.
And like most fire departments are starting to change their names from like Marble Falls Fire Department to Marble Falls Fire Rescue
Yeah.
because they're not just doing fire, they're also doing rescue.
Yeah.
Our engines are equipped with ALS because the nearest hospital is almost like 45 minutes to an hour away from us. So if an engine gets on scene, they want to be able to treat that patient up until an ambulance can get there, and then the people on that ambulance need to be able to treat them until they can get to that hospital, which might be 30 minutes on scene and then 45-minute drive to the hospital.
Right, right. And kind of playing off that rescue idea of it, there are so many different forms of rescue, whether it's collapse rescue, high angle rescue, vehicle rescue. Vehicle rescue alone is a specialty, especially now with all the
Mhm.
technology that's into these electric cars and,
Mhm.
how to, even cut open doors and, all that kind of stuff. Rescue is definitely its own branch of the service, whether you're doing boat, whether you're doing snowmobiles, whatever it is, wilderness rescue. That word rescue that they now use is really taking a foothold and it's doing really, really well.
And especially with the like you said, the electric cars, they have certain safety features, but sometimes that can work against you. Like
Yeah.
there was a case in I think it was a case in DC that there was an electric car that had turned upside down, but the vehicle was still on, so the safety system wouldn't allow the firefighters to open the door.
Yeah. Yeah. So
They're
there's
perfectly capable, the door wasn't blocked or anything, but they couldn't open it because the car wasn't letting them.
yeah, and there's flaws, in the system in that, and we learn as we go along, right? We're
Mhm,
always changing, we're always developing new technologies, and it's up to us as the public safety to stay on top of those and stay educated.
mhm.
So I know that you had a bunch more questions. I know we kind of got off a little bunny trail here, but I
Yeah,
love talking to you
um,
here. You're doing a great job.
so what would you say, like, item-wise, what would you say is the main difference between your ALS jump bag and your BLS jump bag?
Okay. Pretty much it's the invasive things that you can do ALS wise versus BLS wise. BLS stands for your basic life support. So
Mhm.
you fall down, go boom. You're going to have your splint. You're going to have your band-aids. You're going to have your ice packs, that kind of stuff. You're going to have the equipment to move people from point A to point B. That's where the BLS is really good at. But they don't really have any invasive tools, such as they're not going to break the skin. They're not going to put tubes in you or anything like that. They're not going to give you many medications. They may assist you with your own medication, like if you have
Mhm.
a prescription of nitroglycerin or they need to give you some aspirin or something like that. There's a handful of medications that BLS now carries, but it's very limited, right? Where the advanced life support or the ALS, they come with all the saving technology that an ER can do. Pretty much, they have enough equipment to treat any life threatening emergency within that first 15 minutes of that life threat. They're going to be able to
Mhm.
try to get you stabilized before they transport. So they can start your heart if it's not beating. If it's beating
Mhm.
too fast, they can stop your heart. They can put a tube down your throat to help you breathe. They can give you CPAP machines. They can do chest decompressions, surgical crakes, IVs, IOs, IM medication. Any way you can give a medication in the hospital or what you go to your doctor and you think you're going to get an injection,
Mhm.
we can give those medications at the advanced life support level. And that's really the biggest thing that changes between ALS and BLS.
Mhm. And also some of the things I've seen on ALS vehicles, people say that's like, oh, that's dangerous, that's hurting them. Well, usually when ambulance is called, the person's already hurt.
Yes.
So, like, let's say somebody goes into cardiac arrest and you're doing CPR and you break a rib. At that point, that's not the main concern. The main concern is getting their heart started again.
Right, right. Now, those that are watching this that may not be in the healthcare field, we're not making light of any person that's in an emergency, right? I
Mhm.
want to make sure we make that clear. But dead is
Correct.
dead. I can't make someone more dead. So by doing chest
Yeah.
compressions and I may break a rib, actually if I'm doing
Mhm.
good CPR, I'm gonna break a rib. Or if
Correct.
I even use the new Lucas machines that are out there or the thumpers from
Mhm.
Zoll or whatever it is, we're big Lucas guys. That thing looks barbaric. It's, this big machine that
It
kind of goes
does,
around the
yes.
chest. It does very good chest compressions, but the whole
Mhm.
idea is to keep that heart pumping. That's what we want it to
Mhm.
do. And it does it well, but it does look pretty barbaric.
Mhm. And, so, the ambulance that you mainly work out of, is that ALS or BLS?
I'm mainly ALS because I'm a paramedic. We do
Mhm.
have some ambulances within our fleet that are just BLS, and we also have what we consider intermediate units, which are
Mhm.
kind of a half breed, and it's kind of new for us in Pennsylvania. It's only about a couple years old, where you have some of those EMTs that took on the responsibility of gaining some more education and doing some of the basic invasive skills that the paramedics can do on the intermediate unit. And that was to help
Mhm.
kind of bridge that time gap that you talked about earlier on getting people to the scene, the personnel that, we might be short on medics. So
Correct.
by training one to an intermediate level, that's what we have too. So now I run mainly on a medic unit. I do my full time is pretty much on a MICU, which is a mobile intensive care unit, where I have either an EMT partner. Occasionally I'll have another medic, but most of the time it's an EMT partner. And we, take the calls as they come. Whether you're BLS or ALS, we're going to take it. On
Mhm.
the flip side of that, I also do a chase car, and which is all ALS. I carry all
Mhm.
the equipment in there. The difference between that is I don't have the ability to transport patients with that car.
Correct. Mhm.
So I usually support local BLS units. I think there's 11 different municipalities that we cover that I'm going to support with that chase car to the other fire department's ambulance, and we partnership or collaborate on the care of a patient.
Okay. And like you said with the intermediate thing, with the intermediate vehicle, that's sort of what off-road fire rescue is starting to do because on we're starting to try to get more in-person meeting to give that hands-on training and um we have the vehicles to do that. We have the setup to do that, but we don't have the medical supplies like the jump kits, stuff like that. So what we're starting to do is we're engineering a like a jump kit to put on each of our vehicles that has still gear that you need to be trained in, that you would want to train someone in, but not to a very high extent because um like cricothyrotomy, you're not going to have a middle school student doing that.
Right,
Maybe
right.
a high school student, but something like that, you're not going to need that. So you're not going to need a scalpel in their first aid kit. You're not going to need intubation tubes. You're not going to need that.
Yeah.
Now, possibly a basic IV, BVM just over the mouth, that is something they can do. They can do tourniquets,
Yeah.
splints, stuff like that. Like you said, like that basic EMT level, but it's sort of intermediate because we're trying to train them as much as possible for when they get into that, but not too much to where they're like, I don't know that I really want to do that.
Sure, sure. My recommendation for that kind of program is get very strong on those BLS skills. Get
Mhm.
very comfortable on ventilating a patient with two-person ventilations, one holding the mask,
Mhm.
one doing the BVM. Get very efficient on how to splint correctly. I can't tell you how many times
Correct.
people struggle with putting splints on, whether it's a SAM splint, longboard splint, air traction. They struggle with that a little bit, or even doing a sling and swath of an arm
Mhm.
sling. Those are very basic skills that you can have in a jump bag, that if you do effectively, make a world of difference on pain management. If I can
Mhm.
sling an arm properly, I may not even have to give medications for that. So learning it
Correct.
as a BLS level and having those tools, dropping a nasal trumpet in and learning how to do
Mhm.
that, or an oral airway if someone doesn't have a gag reflex. Those things are going to make much bigger of a difference than putting an IV in. I think
Mhm.
an IV is if you're not doing anything with it, you're just wasting time. You have other
Mhm.
things that you can be doing, getting a good set of vital signs, learning what
Correct.
lung sounds are like,
Mhm.
learning how to palpate pulses in the different areas. Those are the kind of things that are going to make a bigger difference on the ultimate diagnosis of a patient, on what do these vital signs mean? How do they trend? Maybe I took two or three different sets of vital signs and it's trending one way or another. What does that mean? So learning
Mhm.
that even at the basic life support level is crucial for the well-being of every patient.
And some of the people who were doing sort of the online meetings, they were like, "Well, if we do in person, are we going to learn how to use a cardiac monitor? Are we learn how to use an EKG monitor, stuff like that?" And I was like, "Well, we don't really have the funding for that, but we can teach you how to manually take vital signs." And that's
Yeah.
something that you're going to want to know because if your cardiac monitor is glitching or not working or something's wrong with it, you got to know how to still take those vital signs with a stethoscope, with the blood pressure cuff.
100%. And Riley, I'm going to tell you right now that over the years I've been doing this, I have seen trends of us not touching patients as much, and we use our pulse
Mhm,
oximetry. We don't count that.
mhm,
We put a heart monitor on or an automatic blood pressure cuff.
mhm,
All these machines are doing the work for us. And what I have found is we tend to miss things when we
mhm.
rely on machines. So any paramedic, EMT that has, any worth to them is at some point during their assessment have to get a manual set of vital signs. That's going to
Correct.
give you a baseline whether your machine is actually accurate. You can get a blood
Mhm.
pressure on a machine that's like 220 over 110, but when you actually do a manual blood pressure, you're like, no, no, that's not even close to what it is. It's
Mhm.
150 over 70. And you wouldn't have known that unless you actually physically touch the patient. Learning how,
Correct.
what their skin feels like, what does tenting in, for dehydration, what's warm versus hot, what's
Mhm,
clammy versus sweaty, all those different kind of things. That's all basic stuff. And every patient that I see, I put hands on. You have
mhm,
to put hands on. Otherwise, you're missing it, and you're going to misdiagnose people and actually hurt people.
mhm. And most people who go into this, they're like, I want to do this, I want to help save people, but I don't know how I feel about seeing somebody's arm mangled and having to put a tourniquet on it,
Sure.
or having to put a needle into somebody's vein. They don't really want to do that grotesque things, and we're not going to make them do it at a middle school level. But
No.
eventually, you're going to have to put in your brain to deal with that if that's something you want to do.
Sure, sure. And everybody kind of learns that on their own. How do they handle blood,
Mhm,
right? How do they handle a deformed injury like a knee injury or an arm or something like that? I had a medic that I worked really well with. He loved sick people, but could not do orthopedic injuries. He's like, Mike, you got to take this orthopedic. And as long as you understand that and you know your
mhm,
limitations, you can kind of work through some of those hangups that you might have. But yeah, we all have to get to a point in our decision making and to decide, is this something that I truly can do? Or this is something I want to take on more of the technology side of it, or I want to take on
mhm.
the more administrative side of it.
And like you said, there are some adults who are like that. Like, one time I went to a summer camp and, a kid, I forgot what we were doing, but a ball hit a kid's finger to where it broke the finger, but, like, right here, it was just sticking straight up.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
the counselor was like, "I can't do this," and then I'm over there putting the splint on as a camper.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, and it's
And
not for everybody. I mean, my family
mhm.
grew up doing medicine. My kids were born into EMS. They've been victims in my scenarios more times than I can count. Uh,
Mhm,
and what we learned is my oldest loved orthopedic injuries, but hated sick people. My
mhm,
youngest liked the mental aspect of healthcare, but couldn't handle blood. So,
mhm,
that's okay. My oldest
mhm,
went into athletic medicine. My youngest went into social work. So
mhm,
there's multiple avenues you can do, but until you get out there, until you start trying it, you won't know. You won't know
mhm.
where you actually fit.
And also, being a paramedic or something like that, you still it incorporates all the roles in medicine. Like how you said the mental side, my in my family I have it's me, the oldest, and then there's my brother, and then I have another brother who's 3 and then a sister who's 1, but my brother he's 9 and he loves to ride dirt bikes. But every time he gets hurt, he just freezes up.
Okay.
He
Yep.
doesn't know what to do. And as the person who's gonna be helping him, I have to know how to be able to help someone who can't communicate what's wrong with them to you.
Sure, sure. Unlike, some of the specialty doctors that are out there that can deal with, you know, a certain genre of people, we'll say
Mm,
autism, for example,
mhm,
or elderly or pediatrics. In the EMS field, we have to cover it all. We're going to go
mhm,
into everything from the
mhm,
newborn infants and neonates to the mental health aspect of it to the regular medicine of geriatrics and everything in between. I think that's why I love it so much. I think that's why I've been
mhm,
doing it for 31 years is because every day is a little bit different challenge. I always
mhm,
feel like the Sherlock Holmes of the area because I have to do that investigation. What brought this patient to me today for what reason? And I get to,
mhm.
ask the questions and get to meet them and try to figure out and help them in a certain way.
And also, part of what people don't understand is, like you said, with elderly, sometimes when they think of an elderly accident, they think of, "Oh, grandma fell down the stairs." But sometimes it could be an elderly person with dementia.
Hmm.
They don't know where they are. There was a video that I watched of a fire department that's near where I live, and they got a call from uh, a woman who's the daughter of the elderly patient, and her mother thought it was World War II again.
Yeah. Yeah.
She thought it was still in that time, and when she heard the sirens pulling up, she went into duck mode like there was a bomb about to drop on her.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's the fun thing about EMS and public safety is we get to see all of that different walks of life where people are at in the stage of life as we go forward. So I also know you got more questions. Let's keep moving forward.
Yes.
We keep
um,
going off on little bunny trails here.
so
And
on
just to let my viewers know, I'm going to stop for a second. One of my cameras just went down. I ran out of storage on that. So now we're just going to pretty
okay.
much have this view in front of us, which is fine. But I was kind of hoping to have two different views, but my camera just went down.
On when you're on the ambulance, do you switch around jobs? Like one day somebody's a driver, one day somebody's in the back, one day somebody's in the passenger seat, or do you have designated spots?
So on the ambulance, we have designated spots pretty much because of the level of service that we're at. I have an EMT
Mhm.
with me and I'm the paramedic. So
Okay.
if it's a life-threatening emergency that the potential of, death within the next half hour, I'm going to take care of the patient regardless of what's going on. If it's just, they're sick, they need a ride to the hospital, they're hurt. I'm not downgrading my EMT partners in any way. Again,
Mhm.
for all those that are EMTs, I am not downgrading you in any way. I can't do my job without you. Uh, but those are the ones where I can drive. I'll just take over, let them work with the patient. They can take the set of vital signs, they can maintain it. And if they notice something different or something changed, they can always call me back up. But we're pretty much set in our ways on the ambulance service. However, because we are fire department based too, we have the option of switching around. So I may not be on the ambulance all the time. I may go and be on the rescue, or I can be on the engine or something like that. So we do
Mhm.
have that opportunity to move around. But once I'm on shift, I'm usually designated to that position.
Okay. And as a while you're a firefighter and a paramedic, do you ever help with mutual aid agencies?
Yeah, one of our territories, like I said, we have 11 different municipalities that we cover. So yeah, mutual aid is really big around us. We support a city that is only BLS. Coatesville City only has BLS. We have Modena Borough that is only, so mutual aid is very important. Whether it's on the fire service or the EMS service, mutual aid works together. Because there's going to be times where even though we have 4 different stations and we have 8 different trucks or whatever, we're going to be out at some point and someone's going
Mhm.
to have to come in and cover our territory or vice versa. They're going to be busy and we're going to cover. So mutual aid is very, very important.
Okay. And do you have like when you get a call for a mutual aid response, are you only going to get it from a set number of agencies that are your mutual aid partners, or could you get one from somebody you don't usually respond to?
We usually know what our mutual aid is. It's usually the neighboring counties next to us.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I've done international response. When we went down to Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Sandy, all those kind of things. I was down in the Texas area, with
Hmm.
Gustav, and that's mutual aid in my opinion. So we can get called up to go down there. But for the most part, the day-to-day operations, we're dealing with our neighbors that we're gonna
Hmm.
work most closely with.
Okay. And what what would you say is something that people or things that people should have for getting their paramedic certification?
Okay. First of all, you got to start from the basic level. So, just get your schooling, get used to studying. Because a lot of the paramedic programs and ENT programs are considered higher education. They're at the college
Hmm.
level basis. They're not going to spoon feed you a whole lot of stuff. So get a mentor to work with you, someone that's maybe in the field that has done it before that can help guide you through it. Stay ahead of the game with all your books. You want to read before you get to class so you understand when the teacher starts speaking what to expect, and you can actually ask intelligent questions rather than just sit there and do death by PowerPoint as they read and stuff like that. You can actually start asking questions. So stay ahead of that. Be
Hmm.
prepared for that. And then also get in your mind that the next year or 2 years of your life, when you're going through paramedic school, you need to be fully invested. because there's going to be so much information that's thrown at you that you're going to get overwhelmed. And we know that. We know that as instructors. We know that as field preceptors that you're going to get overwhelmed. We're there to help you work through that. We use it kind of as a litmus test also, because if you can handle that overwhelming when you're out by yourself and you get overwhelmed, we know what to expect because we've seen you in that situation.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think staying up on your education is very important. I do a series on this on the top 5 things you need before you go into paramedic school to understand how to get A's and that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
there are other resources out there. Be willing to look at other resources like the paramedic coach. He's a good friend of mine. He
Mhm.
does a lot of mentorship online things. If you're that kind of education, don't be afraid to ask questions. When
Mhm.
you don't understand something, ask the questions. And if you don't get the answer, some providers are like, "Oh, you're gonna have to find it." Go to the next one. It's okay. There is no
Mhm.
dumb question.
Mhm. Um,
I know I rambled on
what
there a little bit.
um, what would you say is what's the word? Like between an EMT, if an EMT go pulls up on the scene and a paramedic pulls up on the scene, what would you say is the difference in what they're looking for when they come on scene?
Okay. So basically you're seeing size up, what do I expect and that kind of stuff. Is that kind of what the
Mhm.
question you're asking?
Yes.
So we actually all start from the EMT. Actually, we all start from the first responder level, whether you're,
Mhm.
just a driver that's doing the, typical Boy Scout kind of stuff where you're showing up as a QRS unit, is what we call it. Or you're an advanced paramedic. First things first is scene safety. We got to make sure that
Correct.
we're going into a situation that we're not going to get hurt, that my partner's not going to get hurt, no one else is going to get hurt. If we need to call for different resources, we're going to do that, whether it's a police department, whether that's the rescue team that we talked about before to help us carry patients
Mhm.
or extricate patients, stabilize a vehicle, that kind of stuff. So scene safety first and foremost. Next thing that you want to look for is, how many patients do you have? What kind of injuries? What's the mechanism of injury? And all those kind of things. It goes back to the National Registry's check sheet. I think there's 5 different questions. You're asking, is scene safe? Gloves on, BSI, make sure I have the equipment.
Mhm.
Do I need more resources? What's the mechanism of injury? And there's one more. See, now I'm having a brain fart. But there's 5 different questions that you kind of ask yourself when you're going to
Mhm.
the scene. On the advanced side of it, though, I'm going to add kind of another one. What's important for us to help relieve our anxiety is to know where the patient actually is. We have
Mhm.
so many different places out here that the streets are poorly marked. Your house is poorly marked with your house number on it, whether it's on a mailbox or on your house, have that clearly marked for us. So we don't have to think about and start searching for the patient themselves. We can actually focus on treatments.
Mhm.
That's a big thing that people really don't even think about that can help relieve us and do a better job because by the time we get there, we're focused on you and the injury rather than getting to you. So having that information. Now, from dispatch, if you can get us some good information, is the scene safe, that kind of stuff, that's great.
Mhm.
What is the initial chief complaint? Get that as accurate as you can. We know stories change. Stories change from 911 dispatch, from EMT to paramedic, from paramedic to nurse, nurse to doctor. The stories will change. So, it may
Mhm.
come out as a respiratory or distress, but actually it was a stub toe and they're crying. That's why they have shortness of breath. We
Yeah.
know that's going to happen. But if you
Mhm.
get an accurate one of what's going on from the dispatch side of it, that's going to really make a big difference for us too. Hopefully
And
that answers it.
like you said, knowing where the patient is in certain career fields like some of what the Coast Guard does, search and rescue, technical rescues, and like wilderness rescues, some people have left that to be on an ambulance or in a fire truck because with that, you really don't get a lot of information when you get the initial call.
Yeah.
Like, you could get a call for a stranded hiker, and then you get there, and it's a hiker who shot themselves in the foot,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
You don't with that, there's lots of people who have left because they don't like the fact of not knowing what's gonna happen.
Right. Right.
While on an ambulance, you get a little bit more information than with that. Another question is, uh does the ambulance company that you work for have EMS chiefs? And if so, what is their role in that?
Yeah. Just like any fire department, police department, and really any military organization, we have a hierarchy of administrative staff. We have lieutenants, we have chiefs, we have captains, the whole gamut. Now, not all those positions are currently filled, but we do have a ladder of administrative staff. And the chief sometimes is on truck with me. If he's short staffed and he's going to get on truck. But when we start talking about administrative staff, you need those people to take care of the job that they're also designed to do, such as ordering supplies, making sure I got enough equipment, making sure that
Mhm,
my fleet is running well. So he's going to organize the oil changes and the tire changes and all that kind of stuff. The chief is going to take care of my paycheck. They're going
mhm,
to take care of the insurance. They're going to take care of the billing. They're going to take care of the EMS charts and that kind of stuff. So every level of service has to have some kind of hierarchy, and you have to rely on those people to take care of their jobs so you can focus on taking care of the patients.
mhm. Okay. Um, and you've mentioned chase cars and MICUs. What what would you say are the main set of vehicles that the companies that you work for, the fire departments that you work for, respond out of?
It's been transitioning. So the majority of them are MICUs now. When I first
Okay.
started back in 1994, it was ambulance BLS and chase car medic units. And even back then, it was dual medic chase car medic units. That
Mm,
slowly went away to single car chase car medics. And now we're pretty much MICU services across the board that support local BLS. I mean, it's not unlikely to have two ambulances show up for one call because one's BLS, it's their territory, and we're supporting them with a MICU service. So you'll have two ambulances show up for one patient. Is it the most effective way all the time? No. But like I said, you have to look at the demographics that you serve, how you can get back into service quicker. All those kind of things play a factor, and always reevaluate pretty much every year. What's the best way to service the community that you're in? And I think
mhm,
that's going to be the biggest key. Don't be afraid to change. Just because you do it this year doesn't mean you have to do the same thing next year. Reevaluate, see if a chase car is needed, see if you want to go from a chase car to a MICU. That's going to be huge. But currently, we run a lot of MICU services.
okay. And, you mentioned in one of your I wanna say one of your older videos, that you were a SWAT medic as well. Are you still certified as a SWAT medic?
Yeah, that's actually one of my joys. When I came to Westwood Fire Company, that was one of the things that I almost required of them to take on with me. I'm like, if you want me on your team, I'm going to bring the SWAT with me. Yeah, I've been working with them since 2004. I am a paramedic, not a police officer. I'm not there to do law
Mhm,
enforcement. I am there to support the tactical unit in high risk situations, whether that's hostage negotiations and barricaded subjects, dignitary response, lost people. Most recently we had a big case of a prisoner that escaped. So we're doing wilderness
mm,
searches and all kinds of stuff.
mhm.
That was a huge national news. Um, I am the medical support for that. So I make sure, first of all, that my officers that I work with are safe, protected. I make sure they stay hydrated, make sure that I take care of their bumps and bruises and rashes and all that kind of stuff. But I also take care of the public. And then I also take care of the bad guy. If something goes
Mhm,
down, we are not there to hurt people, but bad things happen, right?
mhm.
I'm there to help take care of that bad guy too, to make sure that, justice is served properly and everybody is treated fairly.
Okay. And, as a SWAT medic, how do you get your calls? How does that work?
So we are considered a part-time service,
Mhm,
but we are on 24/7, 7 days a week, 24/7. So
mhm.
we actually using cell phones now. We used to have pagers, but using your cell phone, you have an app like I Am Responding or what's the other one out there? Pulse Point or something like that, whatever app the
Mhm.
team chooses, you get a
Right.
page and then you can make your response from there. And then what we end up doing is we either go to a staging area for an active incident or we get called to a debriefing house, whether it's a certain fire department, whether it's a police department. We'll debrief and go over what the warrant is, what are the risks, why is a SWAT team needed for this, and those kind of
Mhm,
things. So it's all pager 24/7. There are times where I can't make the calls, and the
mhm,
team knows that, which is why we always have backup, right? I have 3
mhm,
or actually 4 different other medical operators that are on the team too, so, hopefully one of us can make the call, but a lot of time we all make the call. So if I'm on the job, working my MICU service and I get a call out, there may be a time where I can't make it, and the team understands that.
mhm. And so, I watch a lot of your videos. I've also watched, this other YouTube channel, Prep Medic.
Yeah, good
He's
guy. Yeah.
also he's
I wanna
also a
do a
SWAT
collab with him
medic.
one day.
And, he went over the gear that he wears, and I know that you did one of your videos too on that. And he said the way he sets it up is his primary gear is on his vest, secondary is on his belt, and third or last line of defense basically is usually on his backpack, or even I think you have the one that clips onto your vest. Um, is that the same way you set yours up, or do you set yours up
Yeah,
differently?
it's going to be mission specific. So usually the stuff that's on my vest is to treat myself. If for some reason,
Okay.
so I have my own tourniquet. I have an airway that's designed for me. I have my pressure dressings and that kind of stuff for me. So that's usually on my vest. So if I lose my belt, I lose my
Mhm,
clothes or whatever, I have that. Then I carry. I now switched over to a battle belt to kind of free up my vest space a little bit. My battle
mhm,
belt has the stuff for that hot zone area, where the active incident is going on. I don't do a whole lot of medicine in those hot zones. We want to get them out of that hot zone into a cold zone or a warm zone. So, I got plenty of tourniquets. I got pressure dressings. I got quick clots and that kind of stuff on my kind of battle belt. But then my
mhm,
backpack, that's for that long term stuff. That's where I carry the IV fluids and the IVs and the intubations if I need it, the BVMs. We're going to get them out of that hot zone into a warm zone, a place of cover, not just concealment, where I can actually start
mhm.
treating patients. That's where we're going to do that. So I can actually drop that backpack many times in that warm zone. I don't need to bring that into the hot zone. So if there's, God forbid, an active school shooter or whatever, I'm not bringing a whole backpack in. I'm bringing my battle belt with multiple tourniquets, multiple dressings, that kind of stuff. Stop that immediately
Mhm.
bleeding, make sure that they're breathing, and then get them out. That's the ultimate goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and, most people think of SWAT as these people in full tactical gear, guns, and all this stuff, but you are a SWAT medic. Do
Yeah.
you carry guns? Do you carry any offensive weapons?
So currently we do not. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania does not allow for any offensive weapons at this time. In 2004, when I started this, there was no such thing as SWAT medicine or tactical field medicine at all. I lobbied the state for many years with multiple providers throughout the Commonwealth. I'm going to kind of mix that
Mhm,
Commonwealth versus state, and we can get into a whole
mhm,
nother thing. But we lobbied to get the rules and regulations changed, where if we become a team by the state's regulations, I could carry if my team deems it necessary, but I don't have to.
m'kay,
So, my job is to go as far into the incident as I can. So having a weapon would be beneficial because then I don't have to rely on an officer to keep me safe. I can keep my own safe. If it doesn't change my job, I'm not going to pull my gun
mhm,
unless I get fired upon, you know,
correct.
but I would have that option. Currently, the state does not allow for that because they haven't finished that rules and regulations aspect of it. But it is in
I
Title
see.
28. It does say that if my team deems necessary for us to carry a weapon, whether that's a taser, beanbag gun round, beanbag rounds, or an actual firearm, I can do that in the future. Is kind of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
But with that comes all the other training too, and all the other
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities and liabilities of doing
Correct.
that. So as a team, we have to make a decision: is that where we want to go with medics? The other thing
Mm-hmm.
is when you start doing that, you want to make sure that there is absolutely no role confusion. I am still a medic. I am not a police officer. I'm not there to
Correct.
do that. This is simply to defend myself in whatever way.
And there is this one person on YouTube which I disagreed with his statement because he said that SWAT medics are basically the combat medics of the civilian world. And they sort of are, but as you said, you don't carry any offensive weapons. A
Well,
combat medic is a soldier, but then also a medic.
Well, I'm going to kind of debate you just a little bit there. If you actually go back to, the invasion in Normandy and the combat medics that he's
Mhm.
kind of referring to, they were not allowed to carry weapons either. If
Very
you go
true.
back, they had the Red Cross, and the reason for that is because we want to be as neutral as possible. Now, over the years, they have changed, yeah, and they realized that
Correct.
we can't do medicine in a firefight.
Mhm.
Sometimes the best medicine is to return fire to stop the incident from going on.
Mhm.
So it's changed over the years, but that statement that he said, it goes back to the times of the world wars where those tactical medics,
Correct.
they actually didn't have firearms either.
Mhm.
So that statement is correct. We are at that point
Mhm.
where, yeah, we're a combat medic. We need to know how,
And
and we take the combat medic courses many times from the military,
mhm.
and we cross train that into the civilian world.
Mhm.
TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care, is one of the key courses that many of us have to take in order to be a SWAT medic.
Mhm. And just like how you say you can carry a weapon if deemed necessary, in certain military zones, in certain military encounters, you wouldn't need to. You'd
Correct.
still be in your tactical gear in case something happens, but you're not going to need to carry that. In other scenarios, like let's say you have a group of soldiers pinned down and they have a guy who stepped on a landmine.
Right.
In that scenario, you're going into an active firefight to provide medical care. In that scenario, you will need a weapon.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So every city
Um,
is a little bit different. And it is changing across America. You're going to start seeing a lot more medics starting to carry weapons. Again, it's
mhm,
not for offensive, even though,
correct.
you consider it an offensive weapon. It's for that defensive. It's so I can protect
Mhm.
myself and I don't have to rely on another person to protect myself. I should have the option. My personal opinion, not the opinion of my bosses, not the opinion of my company, not even the opinion of my team at this moment in time. My personal opinion
Mhm.
is I think we should carry weapons. Now they need to be very secure, but
Correct.
I should be able to defend myself and have the opportunity to defend myself.
And to go off of that, like let's say it's you and one officer. If that officer goes down, you no longer have that protection. Now,
That's
if you
correct.
had your own weapon, that's where you would be able to defend yourself.
That's correct. And in the years past, there is some gray area. If he goes down, I do have the ability to take his weapon from him.
Mhm.
Good luck with that. With some of the cops, they're like, "Oh, from my cold dead hands will you take my weapon?" Um, but I do have the opportunity to use their weapons to defend not just myself, but also to defend that officer, to get us out of that situation and to retreat as quickly as possible.
Mhm. And so, do you have, as a SWAT medic, do you have a separate tactical ambulance, or would you respond out of the main SWAT vehicle?
We actually use the local ambulance services. So on the team itself, we get put into the team units. So
Mhm.
the Bearcat is what we call it. It's an armored
Okay.
vehicle, the
Mhm.
big rolling tanks kind of thing.
I've seen that.
And
Yeah.
there's a couple different ones. We have a Bearcat. We get put in the stack with the Bearcat. We get put in the trucks with the team because I may have 5 to 10 officers around me to protect me, and I'm going to get as close
Mhm.
as I can. If we need to
Mhm.
transport a patient, our current team uses the local ambulance service. We're going to extract that person from the hot zone. We're going to work our way
Mhm.
through the warm zone and get him into a cold zone and then hand them over to a local ambulance service to do the transport. Now, if it's my own officer, I'm staying with them.
Mhm.
Regardless if I get out
Yeah.
and I'm going to stay with them and go to the hospital. If there's no more work to do, if there's more work to do, I got to let them go. But I'm going to stay with
Correct.
them. Civilians, I'm going to hand off. Bad guys, I'm going to hand off. And that kind of stuff.
And so, uh, how would you like in an ambulance? How would you, if the suspect that SWAT team is going to apprehend, if that suspect gets injured, how exactly would you transport them or provide medical care to them while in an ambulance?
Pretty much the same with any other patient. So, we may have to have security when an officer comes
Mhm.
into the ambulance with us. I have a set of handcuff keys myself. So if I need to secure them to the stretchers, I think what you're asking, how do we secure a
Yeah.
prisoner kind of thing? We have the ability to use handcuffs. We also have other restraints that may not be handcuffs, like the XD cuffs. Great things. If you've never seen
Mhm.
those, take a look at the
Yeah.
XD cuffs. Every ambulance service should get those. I
Mhm.
truly believe in them. So we have ways to secure that patient to the stretcher. But ultimately, I need full access to my patient. So there's many times
Mhm.
where I'm going to tell an officer, or I'm going to take my clippers out or my scissors out, and I'm going to cut the flex cuff because I need
Mhm.
access to their arm to get a good blood pressure. I need to put IVs in.
Correct.
My job is to save lives. The job of the team is to save lives. They're not there to
Mhm.
take lives. So they're very willing and able to let us do that. But I am
Mhm.
going to also have an officer with me as security because he is a prisoner. They have ultimate authority
Mhm.
over that prisoner at that moment in time.
Okay. And how often would you say that you get these SWAT calls and you actually are an active part of that particular incident?
Like I said, we're a part-time team here in Chester County, but we're pretty active. I would say at least once or twice a month, we get called out to
Okay.
do a high-risk warrant service, a barricaded subject. Usually it's an emotional disorder, person with a gun is barricaded, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Occasionally we've had some hostage negotiations. We've done dignitary response for when the president, especially now the elections are coming, they're going to make
Mm.
their rounds.
Yeah.
Joe Biden's, down in Delaware with us, so we got to
Mhm.
deal with all that. Um,
He came through Texas to speak about the border here, and there was Secret Service helicopters, jets,
yeah,
all kinds of stuff in there.
we see that all the time because he's only 35 minutes from where I'm currently at, so which is
Mhm.
his home. Um, so yeah, our team isn't a full-time team, but
Mhm.
we train twice a month, and then we get calls out. On average, some months we don't get any calls, some months we get 4 or 5 calls. But if I put it over a year, we're probably getting 2 calls a month, 3 calls a month.
Okay. And with tourniquets, most people who want to carry a first aid kit, and it's true, you should carry some sort of tourniquet, but most people will buy black tourniquets. Personally, I carry an orange tourniquet because I feel if I'm in a situation where I need to use that, I'm not going to be in a tactical situation.
Okay.
I'm more than likely going to be in somebody who cut their arm off or something. Like if one of the guys who works at my dad's construction business, if they get into an accident where their arm gets cut or something like that, I can apply that tourniquet. And most people are saying that civilians should start carrying orange tourniquets because it's more noticeable to a first responder. Do you agree with that?
Dude,
Or
that is an excellent question. And I am going to agree and disagree with you at the same time. It is not necessarily the color of tourniquet that we're concerned about. It's
Mhm,
actually the manufacturer of the tourniquet. What has happened over the years, we have some very good tourniquets, the cat tourniquet,
mhm,
the soft tourniquet, those kind of things.
mhm,
But just like everything else, there's off makes that come
mhm,
out. The cheap Chinese version, Taiwan version, whatever, they're coming across, they're selling them on Amazon, that kind of stuff. Those tourniquets
mhm.
are not to be used. One, because they're inefficient.
Correct.
And if you're wasting time with
Mhm,
that, you're risking lives. You need to buy a
mhm,
tourniquet that is actually certified by the FDA that to do the job that it is. A nice wide
Hmm.
tourniquet that it's at least an inch and a half wide, has a good buckle on it, has the windlass that you can secure very well.
Correct.
That's the more key thing rather than color. There are blue ones
Hmm.
out there for EMS. There's orange ones out there. There's black ones out there. Black is tactical. The
Hmm.
color really doesn't matter. It's the manufacturer of that tourniquet, which is going to be the biggest thing. So that would be the takeaway is don't worry about color, get the correct
Hmm.
tourniquet.
Personally, I carry a soft T tourniquet in
Perfect.
my first aid kit. Um, but there's this company, I don't know if you've heard of the My Medic.
Mm-hmm.
They create civilian tourniquet or civilian first aid kits, and their first aid kits are great, but they carry rats tourniquets.
Yeah.
I don't know if you seen those, but they're they advertise them as very good for self-application, but then the kits that they carry aren't for self-application. Like their automobile or their one for the vehicle, most times if you have a first aid kit in your vehicle, you're using that for a car crash,
Yeah.
not for yourself. You're using it for another person.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not an
And
artifact, it's for an emergency kit to apply to another person. Yeah. It's really unfortunately it's buyer beware. Do the
mhm,
research before you get the supplies. There are circumstances where it can work. But really look at your mission set on what you're trying to do, who you're trying to
correct.
protect, and that will make a biggest determination on what equipment you need. How easy is it to apply yourself? Is it too big? I'm a
Mhm,
big dude. I can put on a tourniquet pretty easily and have, you know, just enough room. But, a smaller person, you could wrap that tourniquet
mhm,
around 3, 4 times and it still doesn't get tight enough, especially on an upper arm or whatever. So having the proper size equipment for who you are, having
mhm,
the FDA approved equipment is really big, and then knowing what your mission set is.
mhm. And also like the SWAT T tourniquet, that's great for applying for somebody else. It can also be used as a pressure bandage, stuff like that, but it's not great for self-application.
Right.
So if you have it in an IFAC on your plate carrier, that's not going to be very good because trying to put that on, it's
Yep.
not
Yep.
doesn't work very well.
So good points.
Um,
Dude, you do a ton of research. I can tell, even at your early age, you are way ahead of the ball game. I really appreciate what you're doing and the knowledge that you have. I feel like I've been talking to, one of my new EMTs. That has gone through
yeah.
school, that has all the stuff, that is actually working on a truck. I would feel very comfortable with you getting on my truck and you and I being partners.
Hmm. And most of the things that, like, even with my student council, we put out a newsletter every month. And I don't know if you know, but this month or May, not this month, but next month is National First Responders Month. So there's National Nurses Day, EMS Day, Pediatric Care Day, Firefighters Day, Armed Forces Day, all that stuff. And so what we do for our newsletter is we get a bunch of events that happen in the month,
Okay.
put them into categories, and then make little presentations on that to put into our complete newsletter.
Nice.
And so the one about the firefighters and all that, everybody, all the what we call officers, which is like president, vice president, uh, I think we have committee chair and then secretary. They were all like, "I think Riley should do that one," and I was like, "Makes sense."
Okay.
um,
Yeah. So what I want from you before we end this, I
mhm.
want your website where you can go to. Is there a way to donate to help you guys out? Any events that are coming up, make sure that you email me some of that information. I'm going to try to put it up
Okay.
on the screen when I do the editing of this video, and put that up so other people that are watching this have an opportunity to help you out. I think you're doing like I said, a fantastic job of, really getting out there and doing the work at such a young age. It should be very inspiring for many people.
Hmm. About that, we currently don't have any way to donate. We are working on that, and we almost have a website completed. The only thing we have right now is the YouTube channel set up.
Okay.
But we're just waiting on a few more things and then we're gonna launch the website.
Sounds good.
Um, but I just have a few more
Yeah,
questions,
yeah. I'm
I
in no
think.
rush. So I will edit this down to what we need
Okay.
to make it, enjoyable and people don't lose interest. So, but you and I'm really enjoying talking to you. I appreciate, all the good questions that you've had. You've definitely done your research. Um, Kudos to your teachers for giving you the education on how to do this kind of stuff, because what
Mhm,
you're doing is challenging, and many young adults don't even know how to do what you're doing.
mhm. And the reason why I started to do this is because most of the time when you go into school, you don't like some schools will teach you certain things that you need for the career you're planning to go on to, but like all the research I did, I started by getting the information from my school, but lots of the resources that they were allowed to provide did not give a lot of information.
Okay.
Like with uh we have this website called uh Schoolify or something like that.
Okay.
And it's like a career readiness website. So you choose your career, you choose the college you want to go to, you take like a personality test, and then it's like, well, hey, this college doesn't have this particular career field you're wanting to go into, but here's one in your area that does offer that.
Okay.
That's how I got into it, but lots of the information it gives was very limited because of the standards and the laws that the state of Texas has on what schools can provide.
Right. Right.
So that's why I started this, because I can go on myself and do all this research and get all this information, but it's I want kids my age and even some older and some younger to be able to go to one site and be like, well, this guy has a video on, on what a driver engineer does. That sounds like something I want to do. Let me watch this video. And they get all the information they need without having to do what I've done, which is watch a bunch of videos, go through a different bunch of websites and stuff.
Right.
And like right now,
So
I'm
when you're
looking
employable,
for
I'm going to stop you just. I need you to come to Heroes Next Door and work with me. I'm going to send you out and do some research and do some interviews at various stations. So as you get old enough, definitely keep Heroes Next Door involved, and maybe we'll get
hmm
you on the payroll.
One one of the things that I'm doing a lot of research right now is for a homeschool JROTC program. And it's really hard to what I found is that it's really hard to find because most branches don't offer anything for middle school students.
Right.
They do offer stuff for high school, but most middle school kids, they see the high school kids in JROTC and they're like, "Hey, I want to do that," but they don't have that responsibility, and so they don't have that available to them. So I'm looking at it for myself, but then I'm also putting it out on my YouTube channel saying, "Hey, if you're at an online school or even if you're at a middle school who doesn't offer JROTC program, there are these options for you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
The one thing I want you to be cautious is don't grow up too fast. Be a kid.
Very true.
I don't want you to necessarily get into this early on, because it can burn you out. I've been doing this
Mhm,
30 years. I've seen some of my friends that, get 5, 10 years into it and they're burnt out. Last thing I
mhm.
would want to see, Riley, is to see you get into it and get burnt out at an early age. So, definitely balance your work balance,
Very true. Mhm,
family balance, and do your hobbies, that kind of stuff. Do what you're
mhm.
doing. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate what you're doing, but be a kid,
And
and there are certain things that you don't need to see yet, in the EMS field. Um, those will come with time. So,
mhm,
if you do any kind of ride-alongs, don't get offended that they won't take you on certain calls, uh,
mhm.
because we also want to protect your mind. We want to make sure that
Very true.
you are still developing. You're
Mhm,
developing very well, and I can tell that
mhm.
already. but you're still developing. So we want to make sure that you're protected,
Mhm.
because you have to take it from us as we go on. And the last thing we want to do is burn you out or get
And
you
that's also
or traumatize you. We don't want to have you have that post-traumatic stress, and get into that, because now your mental health is going to be an
mhm.
issue. And that's what
One of the
we want
things
to avoid.
one of the things I'm working with my school to do is that's one of the reasons why they don't provide a lot of information. But what I'm telling them is like, hey, you're saying police officers enforce the law, and that's all you're saying.
Right.
There's still, I get you don't want to tell young children a bunch of this stuff, certain, how certain things work and how certain things happen because it could traumatize them. But you could go into it a little bit more. Police officers conduct routine traffic stops.
Right.
They uh respond to traffic accidents. Fire departments are not just fire related. They do EMS as well.
Yeah.
Certain things that they don't say that they could that would not traumatize kids, but is still good for them to know for going into those career fields.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when we developed Heroes Next Door, that we wanted to make sure that it was also kid friendly. We don't
Mhm,
promote to the children, uh,
mhm,
mainly because then it hurts my monetization, which doesn't get me to the next station. So,
mhm.
but if you notice, we don't cuss, we don't show graphic things.
Very
Even
true.
the scenario that we did with the Maryland State Troopers, that's all
Mhm.
fake. That was a
Correct.
training
Yeah.
episode, just to
Mhm,
kind of show you what's going on. We want to make it kid friendly across the board, but we also want to keep the elderly people also interested in it, going, oh, okay,
mhm,
that's a cool truck. I see how the innovation of this
mhm,
changed, now that fire trucks are becoming electric, and all those different kind of things.
mhm,
So for us at Heroes Next Door, it's a constant balancing act between, is it entertaining, is it informational, and what audience are we doing? Our audience
mm,
spans, from 7-year-olds and below, all the way up to 55, 60, and 70-year-old retirees. Um,
mhm.
I had one family contact me on email, said, I have replaced their Saturday morning cartoons, because you don't see those anymore. So every Saturday
Uh-huh.
morning, because I release at 7:07 in the morning, they get up
Mhm.
as a family, have breakfast together, and watch Heroes Next Door, because
That's
that's
nice.
what we want to
Mhm,
do. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly where we
mhm.
want it to be. And I hope to continue this for a long, long time.
Okay. We went through down another rabbit hole.
Of course we did.
Uh,
Many rabbit
but
holes.
um, so what led you? I know we kind of talked about it already, but what led you to start your YouTube channel? Here's Next Door.
Sure. It started because I wanted to become an EMS chief.
Okay.
I'm getting towards the end of my career. I maybe got 10, 15 years left before I need to retire, and I physically can't do it anymore.
Mhm.
So I went to school, got my undergrad in public safety administration, got my graduate degree in organizational leadership, and my goal was to be an EMS chief and start raising the bar's expectations. What I didn't realize is my oldest child married a YouTuber. And for the first year and a half that he was part of the family, of course, I teased him. I'm like, that's not a real job. You can't make money doing that. That's social media. And he's like, contraire. Let me tell you about this. So, we had a lot of discussions. He learned he was not part of EMS. Like my family, they grew up,
Mhm,
they're like, that's just the way it is. He had no idea that these things even existed, to be honest with you. And even my
mhm.
current filmer, RJ, you've probably seen him in a couple of things in the background. He's not
Yeah.
part of EMS, so
Mhm,
learning all this kind of stuff, like we had no idea this even existed in America. Uh,
mhm,
I'm like, wait, there's a disconnect here. And then my
mhm,
son-in-law told me a story that he was driving to work, going to his YouTube company. Every day he passes a fire station that out front on the billboard, it says volunteers needed. He thought that was interesting. He's like, how can I volunteer as a firefighter? Because I don't have any of that education. And how do you
mhm,
volunteer to do that? So we got to talking about it and how that all works. And he's like, oh, people need to know this.
Mm-hmm.
let's do our own YouTube channel. And I'm like, what? I'm not, no, that's not what I wanted. And then eventually 2 years later, we developed a business plan. We launched it in the midst of COVID, which wasn't a great
Mm-hmm.
time to do tours or nothing like that. But I started
Yeah.
telling stories of my career. And it's really taken off well. We're just about to hit 94,000 subscribers. We got millions of views overall on the channel. We've seen probably 200, 300 stations, and
Mm-hmm.
I have another 150 more, 200 more that I haven't even been able to get to yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Michigan, Colorado, Ohio, Indiana, New York, Delaware, Jersey, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. Our goal is to hit all 50 states, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I want to do. Hit all 50 states, hit as many fire, police, and EMS stations as we can. We want to hit the
Mm-hmm.
old ones, we want to hit the new ones, and everything in between. Because
Mm-hmm.
we want to show what you guys are doing. That's really where the key to the show is. It's what are the local people doing in your area and how is it affecting you? So that's kind of how we got started, because we got married into it and developed from there. I actually stopped looking for EMS jobs as far as chief and took on this. I'm going to say kind of full time. It's a full time job, even
Mm-hmm.
though it's not my full time
Yeah.
job. I'm still a paramedic firefighter, but it is a full time job on top of it. And maybe in another year or two, if it continues to grow, this will be all I do, and I'll come off the streets a little bit more. I'll never leave the streets, but I'll come off the streets a little bit more, go see more firehouses, EMS units, police departments
Mm-hmm.
throughout the nation, and really worldwide. I don't know if you know this, but we
Mm-hmm.
have a large viewership from other nations, in the UK, Australia, Germany, Costa Rica, South America, Africa. All these other nations have actually emailed
Mm-hmm.
me and said, "Hey, come do us, come film here."
Mm-hmm.
So we are in the process of trying to develop a Heroes Next Door worldwide, where we get to go see how they do it in the UK compared to the US.
That's cool.
What do they have
Yeah.
in Germany compared to here? So,
Mm-hmm.
as we grow and I get more sponsorships, I get more assistance with that. That's our goal. Will we ever get there? We'll see. I'm only 4 years
Mm-hmm.
into it. So I'm a very young YouTube channel, but that's what we want to do. The other thing that I'm doing is I created a consulting firm. It's called Heroes Next Door Worldwide Consulting, and I am developing a leadership course for anybody that's in really the public service on
Mm-hmm.
what it is to be a leader, what to expect from leaders. So whether you want to be a leader or whether you're an employee, take this course. It's kind of like a paramedic coach course out there. It's still developing, but you can, what does, vision mean? What does mission mean? How do I, lead, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm going to be putting
Mm-hmm.
out here. Hopefully at the end of the year, or if not before, I'm going to offer a course
Mm-hmm.
and then create a whole nother community. So yeah, lots of
That's
things,
that's
lots
good.
of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Um, so you said you've been doing this for about 4 years, right?
Yep.
Um, and you said your goal is to reach 50 states. You said you haven't, right?
Yeah, we have not. So I've been invited to California, Alaska, Hawaii. I just physically, financially can't get there. Everything that on
Mm-hmm.
my company is on my dime. I have to pay my filmers. I have to pay for the
Mm-hmm.
transport. I have to pay for lodging. So I have to be fiscally responsible. So a lot of the stuff that you see on my channel is local, because
Mm-hmm.
I could get there in a day and come back, and I only have to
Mm-hmm.
pay my photographer
Yeah.
for one day, not 7 days of travel kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
as I grow and I get more finance, or the other companies out there can help me get there, I'm done. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I can get a sponsorship from a fire department that put me up for the night, like my
Mm-hmm.
photographer, or videographer, I should say, we have no problem sleeping in a firehouse out on couch. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
we do that now. So if you can get me down there, I'm
Mm-hmm.
there. I'll monitor you
Yeah.
and film you and show you off.
And with how you said you do this all on your own, most YouTube channels, or some you maybe not most, but some YouTube channels, they are paid to-do lists. Like they are sponsored by YouTube to consistently make
Yeah,
content. You're doing this on your dime,
yeah,
not on YouTube's dime. That's
that's correct.
very
Yeah, so I am part of the partnership of YouTube, so I get
mhm,
ad revenue from the
mhm.
commercials that you can skip over and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so that it's called AdSense. So that's how I do
Mhm,
create some revenue to pay for the equipment, like the microphones and the cameras and all that kind of stuff, and my
yeah.
film guys. But
Mhm,
it's a tight budget. I wish the
mhm,
budget was much larger. But yeah, I do get some AdSense from that. I also have sponsorships like the Paramedic Coach, XD Cuffs, most recently Numeric. I did a Capno Spot commercial. Those are all paid commercials that help me develop my program. And without their help and without their support, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. The one thing that I make sure that I do, any product that I review or promote, I would use. Um,
mhm,
even the bikes. I've done a couple of e-bikes recently as reviews.
mhm,
I know they're not hugely watched. I understand that. But those bikes, I can turn around and sell when I'm done to help me get to the next one. But I'll review a bike because I think bikes are key for large events. And having
mhm,
a nice EMS bike or fire bike or whatever and also physical fitness for your mental status and that kind of
mhm,
stuff. I'll do those kind of reviews too. So you see a lot of different things on my platforms. We call them different buckets
mhm,
or playlists on YouTube.
mhm.
I try to keep a wide range of that, and those are the sponsorships are what gets me to the next spot.
And like you said, the fire bikes, or EMS bikes, I've seen several fire departments who have trailers with those bicycles in there, and then on the back they just have like a basic first aid kit on the back, and they'll ride around parades,
Yeah,
carnivals, stuff like that, seeing if anybody needs help, because it's very hard to get an ambulance into those areas, and so
yeah, yeah, and that was one of the things early on in my career that I did too. It's called the IPEMBA certification, International
mhm,
Police Mountain Bike Association, where they teach you how to ride a bike through crowds with 30 pounds of gear on the back and
mhm,
ED or whatever and that kind of stuff. I think those are very important for those larger events, especially again, we have the politicians doing these rallies and stuff like that. You got to
mhm,
get the EMS personnel to there, and the only way to do that is on bikes. So if I
mhm,
can review a bike and give someone an idea and a good cost of that bike, perfect.
mhm. Uh, so which one would you say that you like doing better, station cribs or station rigs?
Those are our two bread and butter for sure. Station cribs and station
Mhm,
rigs. I like the cribs when I get to stay there and actually do some ride-alongs, which brings us back
yeah,
to my favorite is actually the day in the lives. I like actually doing the job. I recently
mhm,
did a dive team up in Piermont, New York. That was actually pretty cool to put on a
mhm,
scuba gear, do that. We do some ride-alongs with fire departments. I did a ride-along with a police department. I've done some live burn scenarios. I like the day in the lives because I'm that adrenaline junkie.
mhm,
Walking around and interviewing, they're great. Every person that has done that for me, I really
mhm,
enjoyed getting to know their system, see how it works, getting to know their house, why they set it up the way they did, why did the new construction do what it did, those kind of things. And seeing the different trucks is cool. But for me personally, day in the life all day long.
mhm. Okay. Um, would you say you like making the videos better or the podcast better?
I like making the videos. I don't do a whole lot of podcasting.
Mhm.
Like we're doing right now is more of a live stream kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of those live streams. Those are good because I get to communicate with my audience. You're a fan
Mhm.
of Heroes Next Door. That's how you end up, reaching out to me and connecting
Mhm.
this. I definitely think that's needed, but going out, traveling the United States, seeing the beautiful country that we have an opportunity to live in, it's like no other country. I've been to Nepal, I've been to Indonesia, I've been to different, communities. There's nothing like America. So
Mhm.
getting to see that on the road and going to the different stations is huge. And I really enjoy that.
Yeah, some of my friends were like, "Well, I want to go to this country. I was going to go to this country." And they say because of scenery, well, if you go here, we have oceans, we have mountains, we have deserts, grasslands, is everything
Yeah.
in one country. You don't have to get a passport, you don't have to do any of that. You just gotta go there and it's there.
Yep.
Um, so a as we talked about certain like me as a minor, I wouldn't be able to go on certain calls because I'm a minor. They don't want me to see certain things. Do you get special privileges going on uh ride-alongs because you are a firefighter or paramedic?
I would have to say yes. Now there is a lot of red tape that I go through to get that done. Sometimes I
Mhm,
have to provide all of my certifications. And my certifications are national registry certifications. I have my national pro board firefighter one. I have, national paramedic, certifications, all
mhm,
those different kind of things. That does allow me to get on the truck a little bit more. Um, I have to pay attention to my filmer, just because I can get on the truck doesn't
very
mean
true.
he necessarily can. So there's a couple times where he got
Mhm,
left behind and I have to do the kind of the selfie style YouTube shoot.
mhm,
But yeah, I think it does allow me to get on the trucks a little bit more than normal, even with the police
mhm,
department, because I understand the SWAT aspect of it. I work very closely with police officers. I understand what they do. So, also learning how privacy works, for the HIPAA
mhm,
regulations. I don't want to violate anybody's privacy. I try to be very, very cautious on that. Um, so yes, I think I do because I have that. As minors, yeah, you're going to be held back for different things, and I think that's a good thing.
mhm,
You'll
mhm,
get there. Be patient.
mhm,
But there are, explore programs out there, and they're very, very good at
mhm,
exposing you to what you need to do, letting you
mhm,
understand what the work is, put in the work, and then you will be rewarded.
mhm. And also with like the our program at Off-Road Fire Rescue and these other Fire EMS Explorer programs, they build you up as you grow in age, they build you up to where once you're, let's say, out of high school, you've seen certain things. Like at middle school, you're not going to be seeing the things that you might be seeing as a high school explorer because once you finish high school, you might go straight into that career field. Middle
Right.
school, you still got 4 more years to go
Sure.
till you
Sure. And
get to
that's
that
actually what's
position.
really cool about public service is you don't necessarily need a college education to start a
Mhm,
career.
mhm,
Will you need it eventually? Absolutely. I think you're going to get stuck if you don't get an education, whether that's an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, or even, like myself, a master's degree. Some even have PhDs when they start getting into education aspects of it.
mhm.
But you can start your career right out of high school, start earning good money, and get a great foundation for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and uh one of the people who works at my dad's company, he's a volunteer firefighter. And so he'll be working at a job with us. My dad's company, we build boat docks like on lakes and stuff.
Okay.
And so he'll be at a job and several times he's gotten the calls and he goes jumps in his truck and takes off and then he'll come back.
Yeah.
But one thing that people don't understand is that when you see somebody's personal vehicle with the lights and sirens going down the road, they're not a cop.
Yeah.
I've seen he's even said it multiple times. People have like stopped right in front of him. He's like, "Get out of the way." Like I'm not pulling you over. I'm trying to get past you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
I think
and
it's cool that your dad allows him to do that because there are some
mhm,
services out there, the businesses that like you can't leave once you're at work. They'll dock your
yeah.
pay or whatever. But there are, companies out there, a lot of um, public works. places, they allow
Mhm.
their providers to or employees to leave to help with fire and EMS and that kind of stuff. So, kudos to your dad for doing that. I appreciate him allowing volunteers of his service.
Mhm.
I know it can be a burden sometimes, when it
Mhm.
slows down the work, but ultimately he's giving back to the community, whether it's physically himself being a volunteer or allowing
Mhm.
his staff to do that. That's huge. So, thank you to your dad.
And it also helps having him on working with us because he is a firefighter paramedic like yourself. So if something happens on the job site to where, like, usually I carry my first aid kit with me everywhere I go.
Yep.
So if somebody's like one person sprained their ankle, I was able to assist them with that. But if there's something past my expertise or basic first aid, that's where he can come in and assist somebody, his fellow coworker there. Like if
Sure.
somebody cuts their finger off with a saw or something like that,
Yeah.
he can assist with that. And
It only
it came in
benefits the work and the community.
mhm, came in handy once because the way our shop is located, it's right off of a highway. So you have to go kind of slow down and turn in quickly so you don't get hit by somebody passing by.
Okay.
Uh, but one time, one of a car with two of our workers, uh, one of the guys, his car died, so one of the workers was nice enough to go and pick him up, and they were coming in, they were turning in, and an F-150 didn't see him, and they're in a little Nissan car. The F-150 didn't see him, so they hit him from behind, and they spun in a circle and went into the ditch. And so, uh, the person who's a volunteer fire department or who's a volunteer firefighter, he was right behind them coming into work as well. So he was able to stop, position his vehicle to stop traffic, and then like turn on his lights and stuff, and then go and assist the people who is there. And I say if it weren't for him and the other guys praying, one of the guys wouldn't have made it because they had to do CPR. They had to start CPR three different times. They
Okay.
started CPR, he was alive with a heartbeat, and then he lost consciousness again, CPR again,
That happens.
multiple
Yep.
times. And
Yep.
it's good to have that, to be able to have those volunteers there before the actual paid staff gets there because it takes a while for them to get there. So if you have somebody who flips over volunteer firefighters right there rather than waiting 30 minutes for somebody to get there,
Yep. Yep.
definitely helps.
So I'm gonna ask you some questions now. Are you done with
Okay.
your questions? Your list pretty
Yes.
covered? Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to know a little bit more about you. How did you get into public service? Because I'm going to say you're in it. You got enough knowledge that you're kind of doing. I know you're,
um
but do you have family members that are involved in it?
so my my uncle is a police officer. My aunt is she's in the Army National Guard and she is also a volunteer firefighter. Um and then I have I mainly got into it. I started getting into the military, and then once I realized, I was like, well, I want to be in the military, but I want to be able to help people. And that's where I got into that combat medic, SWAT medic area. And then from there, I just started looking into the broad spectrum of public safety because in my family, there's lots of people in the military. My grand, both, no, one grandfather was in the military. I have an aunt who's in the National Guard, uncle who is in the army, and then throughout uh throughout the years we've had lots of family friends who have been in the military, who have been firefighters, police officers, and then I just started doing my own research and found a bunch of things, have volunteered with certain places and stuff, and just went on from there.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Are you planning on when you get out of high school going into the military, or do you want to go right into public service?
Uh, it's difficult. Um,
I know you're still young,
I'm
so
trying to I'm looking at the different branches and I've already excluded some because I'm like, well, those don't have the certain things that I want to do, like Marines. I want to be some kind of medical provider within the military. Marines, they don't have that. So that one was automatically out. Navy, they have your hospital corpsmen's. Uh, Army 68 Whiskey, which is the combat medics.
Mhm.
Air Force has the probably the largest range of medical providers
Okay.
because they have pararescue, they have emergency aircraft personnel, then they have people who are on the ground who do medical support, flight nurses, flight surgeons. They even have certain planes where like they can do a triple heart bypass while in the air
Right.
if necessary, amputations while in the air, whatever they need to do. And then what was that? It was Army, Air Force,
Navy.
Navy, and then Coast Guard. They do a lot of search and rescue. So they have your rescue swimmer, which is has to be a certified EMT. They can be paramedic if they wish to, but they at least have to have certified EMT. And then they obviously go through the famous A school. Um, but then also they have, the rescue pilots. They have the flight mechanics. They have flight surgeons, flight corpsmen. Uh, there's lots of medical fields within the military, but I think I would definitely go into one of those and then transfer into the civilian um emergency services.
Good, good. That's a great way to do that. A lot of my friends have gone that direction. Just be aware that some of the things do not relate into the civilian world. So you'll still have
Correct.
to, like when you get out, even though you were a maybe a parajumper or a
Mhm.
rescue guy, you still may have to take some civilian courses when you get done.
Correct.
But it does relate across the board. I think
Mhm.
those people that have served are much more mature than the ones that just come right out of high school and do it. So
Mhm.
good. I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for even having that interest in doing what you're doing. So
Mhm.
we're going to kind of close up then. We're just going to say our goodbyes for now. We'll definitely keep in
Okay.
touch. Make sure
Mhm.
you subscribe to what's your channel again?
Middle school career readiness.
Okay, so those viewers that are watching right now, make sure you hit his YouTube channel. Check that out. Thank you for watching Heroes Next Door. This was another Around the Fire Table with Riley Rucker. Rucker, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
almost like trucker, but Rucker. I love
Yeah, every time I type it into something, it's like misspelled. I'm like, no, it's not.
it. No, it's not. Thank you so much, Riley, for talking to me. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed talking to you. Hopefully, you got the information for your class. We're going
Mhm.
to continue to promote you and do what we're doing. So, once
Mhm.
again, this is Heroes Next Door. If you haven't done it yet, hit subscribe, hit notifications, smash those like buttons, make some comments below. Tell us what you guys think, where you guys want to be. Give us some more information because that's how we can serve the rest of you. We'll see you again next week, guys.
Mhm.
Take care.